You're about to hear something that most older men never discover until it's too late. Something that flips the entire dynamic between you and younger women in a way that will feel almost unfair. Because the truth is, attraction isn't random, it isn't luck, and it definitely isn't about competing with younger guys. It's about unlocking a part of yourself that most men abandon as they age. And once you reclaim it, younger women don't just notice you, they pursue you, they chase you, they try to impress you. And the most surprising part is that it has nothing to do with money, looks, or pretending to be someone you're not. What I'm about to tell you is going to challenge every outdated belief you've ever carried about age, confidence, and masculine value. So if you're expecting clichés, you won't find them here. If you're expecting shallow tips, you're in the wrong video. This is for the man who's tired of feeling invisible, tired of shrinking himself, tired of believing that his best years are behind him, because they're not. In fact, if you understand what I'm about to reveal, your best years become the ones younger women crave the most. Most men never hear this message. Most men never wake up to this truth. And that's exactly why they stay stuck, overlooked, and frustrated. But not you, not today. Today, you're going to learn the shift that makes younger women see you as the man who stands out in any room, the man who carries presence instead of insecurity, direction instead of desperation, value instead of validation seeking. Stay with me until the end, because once you hear this, you'll never go back to the version of you that's settled for less. This changes everything. When I say self-command is the core of male attractiveness, I'm not talking about surface-level confidence or pretending to be strong. I'm talking about the rare ability to remain anchored when most men drown in their own impulses. Younger women don't chase older men because they look older. They chase them because they feel something around them that's almost unheard of today. A presence that isn't chaotic, a masculinity that isn't loud, a confidence that doesn't need an audience. That level of self-command is so scarce in younger men that when a woman experiences it, it feels like emotional oxygen she didn't even realize she was suffocating without. You see, youth comes with energy, excitement, and potential, but it often lacks regulation. Younger men act fast, react fast, get triggered fast, and seek validation faster. Their emotional world is like a storm, intense, unpredictable, and unstable. But a man with self-command is the opposite. He has calm inside him, and that calm becomes a container for the chaos around him. Women feel that instantly. She can sense it in how you sit, how you think before you speak, how you don't rush to fill silence, and how you don't collapse when something or someone challenges you. Self-command is not aggression. It's not dominance. It's self-mastery. And that mastery is what makes you stand out without trying. A man with self-command doesn't need approval because he already approves of himself. He doesn't need external validation because his internal compass is already aligned. He doesn't need to chase attention because he understands that attention is a byproduct of identity, not desperation. And this is exactly why younger women are drawn to older men. Because age, if handled correctly, brings clarity. Not the clarity of knowing everything, but the clarity of not needing everything. A younger woman feels attracted to that because it gives her a reference point of emotional stability she rarely finds in men her own age. Self-command also shows up in how you respond to emotional triggers. Most men lose themselves the moment a woman gives them affection or withdraws it. The moment she texts, they jump. The moment she ignores them, they panic. The moment she criticizes, they crumbled. But when you have self-command, you don't operate on her emotional schedule. You operate on your own. That doesn't mean being cold. It means being centered. It means you don't let her moods, fears, or insecurities dictate your identity or direction. This is where older men naturally hold an advantage. Because life teaches you that not every reaction deserves your energy. But it's not age alone, it's awareness. Some men grow older but never grow wiser, while others become powerful simply because they learned how to master themselves. Younger women notice the difference immediately. A man without self-command will over-explain, over-try, over-give, and over-apologize. A man with self-command gives what is necessary, says what is true, and acts with intention. She feels the strength in your restraint. She sees your discipline in how little you need from her. She senses your depth in the way you choose your words carefully. She experiences your maturity in the way you hold space without demanding attention. This is the type of man she chases. Not because he chases her, but because his presence makes her feel more feminine, more calm, and more connected to herself. Psychologically, women are drawn to men who can regulate themselves because a man who can regulate himself can handle life. He can handle stress, pressure, conflict, uncertainty. He becomes an anchor, not an additional storm. Younger men often want to impress with speed, fast messages, fast emotions, fast attachment. Older men impress with stillness. Emotional pace is everything. When you move with intention, she feels safe. And when she feels safe, she becomes curious. That curiosity turns into attraction, and that attraction becomes pursuit. Self-command is not about controlling her. It's about controlling yourself so deeply that she feels drawn to the stability you radiate. You become her calm in a world full of noise. You become the man she can lean into without losing herself. You become the difference she didn't know she was searching for. And remember this, chasing is not about running after someone, it's about becoming someone worth running toward. Develop your self-command, and you won't have to prove your value. It will speak through your silence, your presence, and your choices. Master yourself, and you won't need to ask for attention. Your energy will pull it to you naturally. A man who commands himself becomes a man every woman wants to follow. When we talk about emotional gravity being more attractive than looks, people often misunderstand what that actually means. Emotional gravity isn't about being serious all the time, or acting mysterious, or pretending to be deep. It's the weight of your presence. It's the psychological impact a woman feels when you walk into a room. Not because you're loud, not because you're showing off, but because your energy is grounded, composed, and self-assured. Younger women especially are drawn to this because emotional gravity is something younger men rarely possess. They might have youthful excitement, physical energy, and ambition, but they often lack the internal stability that comes with true emotional maturity. Younger women feel emotional gravity not through words, but through contrast. When she talks to younger men, she sees impulsiveness, insecurity, emotional volatility. She sees men who react instantly, who get triggered easily, who panic when text messages are ignored, who need reassurance constantly. But when she encounters a man with emotional gravity, the difference is so sharp that it feels shocking. She suddenly feels the atmosphere shift. A kind of stillness, a calm energy, a confidence that isn't loud but is deeply rooted. This is what draws her in, long before she even thinks about physical attraction. Emotional gravity comes from emotional regulation. It's the ability to hold strong emotions without letting them spill everywhere. It's the ability to listen without interrupting, to feel without becoming overwhelmed, to observe without rushing to respond. A man with emotional gravity isn't shaken by small issues. He doesn't take everything personally. He doesn't let temporary emotions ruin long-term relationships or opportunities. He sees beyond the moment. He brings perspective, patience, clarity, qualities that younger women find soothing because they offer something rare: emotional safety. And women, regardless of age, seek emotional safety before anything else. Safety doesn't mean being soft or overly accommodating. It means being reliable in your emotional state. It means she knows that if she expresses frustration, you won't explode. If she pulls back, you won't chase desperately. If she tests you, and she will, you won't crumble or become defensive. Instead, you remain yourself. You remain stable. That stability is emotional gravity. Emotional gravity also shows up in how you handle conflict. Younger men often escalate conflict because they feel threatened. Their self-worth is fragile, so disagreement feels like an attack. A man with emotional gravity never makes conflict personal. He approaches it with curiosity, not ego. He asks questions instead of assuming. He pauses instead of reacting. He responds with intention instead of emotion. This level of control is deeply attractive because it allows a woman to relax. She doesn't have to worry about emotional chaos. She doesn't have to manage your feelings. She doesn't have to shrink herself to keep the peace. Another part of emotional gravity is the way you carry silence. Most people are terrified of silence because silence exposes insecurity. But a man with emotional gravity uses silence as a form of communication. He doesn't rush to fill space. He doesn't become awkward or anxious. He lets silence speak because he is comfortable with himself, and that comfort becomes magnetic. A younger woman senses that she's sitting with a man who doesn't need to perform or impress. He simply exists confidently. That is powerful. Emotional gravity also makes your attention feel more valuable. When you listen with presence, not with divided focus, not with hidden agendas, not with impatience. Your attention has depth, and depth leaves an imprint. Women feel emotionally fed when a man with gravity listens to them because your presence gives their words meaning. Your calm energy absorbs their emotions without judgment. You become a grounding force in their life, not because you're trying to be, but because you already are. This kind of energy cannot be faked. It's cultivated through inner work, discipline, self-mastery, and a willingness to understand your own emotions. Younger women chase older men, not because they want a father figure, but because they crave the emotional stability that many younger men haven't yet developed. Emotional gravity is rare, and anything rare becomes valuable. A man with emotional gravity becomes unforgettable because he offers not just attraction, but transformation. He elevates the emotional space around him. And remember, this emotional gravity doesn't come from age. It comes from awareness. Age may start the process, but intention finishes it. You build emotional gravity by choosing maturity over impulse, calm over chaos, and presence over performance. A man with emotional gravity doesn't chase attention. He attracts it effortlessly because the world gravitates toward whatever is grounded. When I say stop chasing and become the standard, I'm not telling you to play games or act indifferent. I'm telling you that the moment you stop seeking validation outside yourself, you shift from scarcity to abundance. And abundance is what attracts younger women more than anything else. Scarcity makes you needy. Abundance makes you magnetic. And the truth is, most men chase because they don't believe they are enough on their own. They think attention from a woman will complete them, will validate them, will fill the inner gap they've ignored for years. But the moment you operate from hunger, emotional hunger, psychological hunger, validation hunger, you communicate insecurity without saying a single word. Women feel it, they sense it, and they run from it. Younger women especially, because they are surrounded by men their age who chase constantly. Messages, emojis, reactions, desperation, approval, seeking. It's everywhere. So when she meets a man who doesn't chase, she isn't confused, she's intrigued. She wants to understand why he's not affected by her beauty, her attention, her silence, or her availability. She wants to understand why he's not competing with the other men who try to impress her. And this is where your power rises, not in the act of ignoring her, but in the act of being so rooted in yourself that her presence doesn't shake your foundation. Becoming the standard means you move differently, you speak differently, you decide differently. You don't give every woman access to you just because she looks good. You don't respond instantly because your time has value. You don't allow poor behavior because your boundaries are non-negotiable. You stop auditioning for women and start evaluating them. You stop trying to fit into their world and start lifting the quality of your own. When you carry yourself like a man who knows his worth, you don't need to chase. People naturally follow what is strong, steady, and self-contained. And understand this deeply, attraction doesn't come from pursuit, it comes from energy. A man who is centered in his mission emits an energy of purpose. A man who knows what he wants emits an energy of clarity. A man who respects himself emits an energy of discipline. This is the energy that younger women are drawn to. Not because they need saving, not because they want a hero, but because a man with standards sets the emotional tone of every interaction he enters. He becomes the reference point, the benchmark, the standard she subconsciously measures other men against. When you chase, you communicate that she is the prize and you are the applicant. But when you become the standard, you communicate something far more powerful: mutual value or no connection. This flips the dynamic. It makes her evaluate you. It makes her invest emotionally. It makes her reflect on how she shows up, not because you are manipulating her, but because your presence silently demands respect without asking for it. Younger women are drawn to older men who don't chase because it shows a level of emotional maturity they crave. A man who chases is controlled by desire. A man who becomes the standard is controlled by purpose. And purpose is infinitely more attractive because it creates emotional safety. She sees that you don't crumble when ignored, that you don't react when challenged, that you don't lose yourself when you feel attraction. That level of stability makes her feel more feminine, more open, more receptive, and eventually more invested. Becoming the standard also means you stop responding to superficial attraction. You start looking for alignment, emotional, intellectual, spiritual alignment. You choose depth over excitement. You choose character over chaos. You choose connection over attention. And because you choose differently, she treats you differently. You're not just another man she can impress. You're a man she wants to rise to meet. This is where the chase begins. Not because you pulled away, but because you elevated the space. A man who becomes the standard doesn't need to convince anyone to stay. His energy, his values, his discipline, and his presence do the work for him. He doesn't try to be chosen, he chooses himself first. And the most powerful thing you can understand is this: when you stop chasing, you give her the space to feel. When you hold your ground, you give her the chance to move toward you. When you become the standard, you stop fighting for attention and start attracting respect. A man who chooses himself becomes a man a woman will choose willingly. When I say purpose creates magnetic energy, I'm talking about something far deeper than ambition or career success. Purpose is not a job title, it's not money, and it's not external achievement. Purpose is the direction your soul is moving in. It's the inner compass that guides your decisions, shapes your identity, and determines the energy you radiate wherever you go. And younger women feel this energy instantly. They feel when a man knows where he's going, and they feel when a man is lost. Attraction isn't random, it's psychological. Humans gravitate toward clarity because clarity feels safe. A man aligned with his purpose carries a clarity that feels like leadership, and leadership is attractive on a subconscious level. Younger men often chase excitement, distractions, or temporary pleasures, and that creates a scattered, inconsistent energy. But a man with purpose has focus, and focus creates emotional gravity. It shows up in the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you make decisions. Purpose gives your present structure. It makes you less reactive, less easily influenced, and less emotionally dependent. A woman feels that instantly. She can sense the difference between a man who wants her because he has nothing else to pour himself into, and a man who wants her but doesn't need her to feel whole. Purpose transforms your entire emotional world. It gives you a reason to wake up. It gives you something to build toward. It gives you something to lose, which makes you sharper, more disciplined, more intentional. And this intentionality becomes attractive because it makes your actions meaningful. You don't waste your time, your energy, or your attention. You don't settle for chaos. You don't entertain people or habits that pull you off your path. You start operating with standards, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you know where you're going and you don't want to be distracted. This is why younger women chase older men who have purpose, not because of age, but because age often forces men to confront themselves. It forces them to refine their priorities and shed the illusions they carried in their youth. A man with purpose doesn't live to impress others. He lives to fulfill the mission he's committed himself to. That depth makes him irresistible. Purpose also shapes your emotional availability. When you are deeply connected to your mission, you stop clinging to relationships out of fear of being alone. You understand that solitude is part of growth, not punishment. Women feel when a man is afraid of losing them, and that fear creates repulsion. But when you're grounded in purpose, you're not afraid of loss. You know that anything meant for you will align with the path you're on. This mindset is powerful because it creates emotional independence, and emotional independence creates attraction. Purpose clarifies your boundaries. You know what adds to you and what drains you. You know what behaviors you accept and which ones you walk away from. A man with purpose doesn't tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional games. Not because he's cold, but because his standards protect his mission. Younger women admire this level of self-respect because it shows emotional maturity. They see a man who protects his energy, and that makes them want to invest theirs. And here's something most men never understand. Purpose changes how you love. When a man lacks direction, he uses relationships as escape or identity. Love becomes dependence. But when a man has purpose, he loves from a place of strength. He chooses partnership not because he needs validation, but because he wants someone who aligns with his growth. A younger woman feels safer with a man like this because his love isn't desperate. It's steady, intentional, and grounded. He doesn't lose himself in her, and she doesn't have to lose herself for him. Purpose also creates a unique kind of magnetism, an invisible force that pulls people toward you without effort. When you speak, people listen. When you move, people pay attention. When you share your ideas, people take them seriously. This doesn't happen because you force it, but because your inner direction gives your voice weight. A woman can feel your purpose even in silence. It's in your discipline, your choices, the way you handle challenges, the way you navigate life. A man with purpose becomes someone others want to follow, not because he demands it, but because he embodies it. And always remember this, a man aligned with his purpose never chases. He attracts, because purpose is the one form of power that cannot be faked, forced, or taken away. When you commit to your purpose, everything else, including the right woman, naturally gravitates toward you. When we talk about boundaries making a man irresistible, people often misunderstand the word boundaries. They think boundaries mean being cold, being distant, or being controlling. But real boundaries have nothing to do with walls. They have everything to do with standards. A man with boundaries is a man who knows what he will accept and what he will not tolerate. He knows what aligns with his peace and what threatens it. He knows what energy he allows into his life and what energy he refuses to entertain. And women, especially younger women, feel this instantly because boundaries communicate something deeper than desire. They communicate self-worth. A man with boundaries does not pursue chaos. He does not romanticize inconsistency. He doesn't justify disrespect. He doesn't confuse chemistry with compatibility. He doesn't sacrifice his peace to keep someone impressed. His boundaries act as a filter, protecting him from emotional manipulation, from unnecessary drama, and from people who do not know how to value him. And this is exactly why he becomes so attractive. Because in a world where people bend themselves out of shape just to be liked, a man who refuses to compromise his inner state becomes incredibly rare. Younger women are constantly surrounded by younger men who lack boundaries. They confuse attention with affection, obsession with love, possession with connection. They fall into relationships they are emotionally unprepared for. They tolerate behaviors that drain them. They settle for the validation they think they can get. But when they meet a man with clear, unwavering boundaries, the contrast is shocking. They suddenly feel the presence of someone who is not seeking approval, who is not afraid of losing them, and who is not controlled by emotions. That emotional independence creates an irresistible pull. Boundaries also reveal emotional discipline. You don't respond instantly to everything that comes your way. You don't allow your emotions to drive your decisions. You pause, you reflect, you evaluate. This makes your presence feel grounded, stable, and deeply masculine. Younger women sense that you're not thrown off by their moods or their tests. You don't get reactive, you stay regulated. And because you're not emotionally thrown around, you create a safe emotional space around you. When a man has boundaries, he knows when to walk away. He doesn't cling to potential. He doesn't idealize someone who hasn't earned his loyalty. He doesn't stay in situations that drain him because he believes in something better, not because he's arrogant, but because he trusts himself. And that trust is attractive because it shows you are not afraid of solitude. You are willing to lose someone rather than lose yourself. That alone sets you apart from most men. Boundaries also change the dynamic of attraction. When you protect your time and your energy, she begins to value it. When you don't overextend yourself, she begins to invest more. When you don't accept disrespect, she becomes more mindful. It's not manipulation, it's alignment. People treat you based on what you allow. A man with boundaries teaches others how to love him, not through force, but through example. And a younger woman feels safe with a man like that because she sees that he doesn't operate from fear. He operates from clarity. A man with boundaries also communicates without raising his voice. He communicates through behavior, through decisions, through consistency. You don't need to explain who you are. Your standards make it obvious. And this kind of presence changes the tone of every interaction. You're not chasing validation, you're evaluating alignment. You're not reacting emotionally, you're responding intentionally. You're not afraid to say no. And a man who can say no becomes a man a woman wants to say yes to. Your boundaries also determine the kind of woman you attract. A woman who is serious, grounded, self-aware, and emotionally stable will respect a man with boundaries. She will rise to meet him. She will match his energy. But a woman who thrives on chaos, drama, attention, and emotional manipulation will run, because your boundaries expose her. And that is exactly why boundaries are powerful. They protect your peace by filtering out what does not belong in your life. A man who lacks boundaries becomes drained, anxious, insecure, and dependent. But a man who has boundaries becomes focused, calm, selective, and emotionally powerful. And emotional power is what younger women are drawn to, not because they want control, but because they want a man they can emotionally trust. A man with boundaries becomes irresistible, not because he is unavailable, but because he is unshakable. Remember this: the moment you protect your peace, you become a man who elevates the space he enters. And that is a man any woman will chase.